All right, buckle up because today we're going deep, deep into eyelid psoriasis.
Eyelid
Yeah,
psoriasis.
eyelid psoriasis. And
Uh,
trust me, it's way more interesting than it sounds. Whether you're here because you need this info for something specific or just because you're curious.
Always good to be curious.
Absolutely. Well, we've got you covered. Okay, so imagine this. Your immune system kind of goes a bit off the rails, right? And it starts telling your skin cells to regenerate 10 times faster than they should.
10 times.
Yeah, that's basically psoriasis right there. Now, I know we've all heard about the usual redness and itching, but it's when this overdrive hits your eyelids. Things get wild.
Eyelids are delicate, so I can imagine.
That's an understatement. The research we're diving into today mentions dryness, scales, even trouble blinking. Oh, and get the
Oh,
scales on the eyelashes. Ever heard of that?
scales on your eyelashes. That sounds unpleasant. It makes sense, though. The skin on your eyelids is incredibly thin. Combine that with super fast cell turnover.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're going to have some seriously uncomfortable symptoms.
It makes you realize how vulnerable that area is. And, the sources we're looking at mention that if you leave eyelid psoriasis untreated, it could even threaten your vision, which is scary.
Absolutely, and that's because if that inflammation is left unchecked, it can spread to other parts of your eye.
So, what are we talking here, pink eye?
Well, it can lead to more serious conditions like uveitis or iritis. Have you ever had, like, eye pain, sensitivity to light?
Yeah, I mean, who hasn't, right?
True, but those can be signs of those conditions, and if
Right.
you leave those untreated, that could lead to vision loss.
Wow. Okay, so this isn't something to mess around with. I'm glad the stuff we're looking at talks about treatments, though.
Lots of options these days.
From what I see, there are five main types: topical treatments, phototherapy, biologics, systemic medications, and then just warm compresses.
Quite a range.
Right. Going from high tech to surprisingly lo-fi.
And even those simple treatments like warm compresses, you have to be careful around the eyes. We're
Yeah.
talking about really, really delicate skin.
Right. Delicate is an understatement. So let's break down each of these treatments and what makes them unique when it comes to the eyelids. First up, topical treatments. Are we talking your basic drugstore lotions here?
Oh, no, no, no. We're talking prescription medications, things like corticosteroids.
Corticosteroids. Sounds serious.
Well, they are. There's also protopic, Elidel. These are some things used for eczema, but they can be helpful for psoriasis too. But, and this is a big but, caution is key. Especially with those topical steroids. They can increase your risk of things like glaucoma, cataracts.
Okay, so this is not a DIY situation at all.
Definitely not. You want a doctor involved in these decisions.
Makes sense. Okay, what about phototherapy? I know it uses light, but how does that actually work?
So phototherapy, it uses ultraviolet light,
Hmm.
either UVA or UVB. And it basically,
Yeah.
it slows down that out-of-control skin cell growth we talked about.
Okay, right.
Now, while a little bit of sunshine can be good for some people with psoriasis on other parts of the body, don't try that with your eyelids.
Yikes. Yeah, I can only imagine. Too risky for such a sensitive area.
Exactly. The research recommends, it recommends controlled UVB phototherapy with lamps or lasers.
Okay, so professional grade stuff.
Exactly.
Makes sense. Controlled and supervised is definitely the name of the game when we're talking about eyes. Okay, this next one sounds like it's straight out of Star Trek. Ready? Biologics.
Huh, yeah, that one gets thrown around a lot.
So what are they? Some kind of futuristic treatment?
They sound futuristic, but they're becoming more and more common for treating moderate to severe psoriasis. Essentially, they're medications that target very specific parts of your immune system, the parts that are freaking out and causing the inflammation.
So instead of just masking the symptoms, these biologics actually address the root cause?
You got it.
Now that is fascinating.
And what's really cool is that there are four main classes of biologics. You've got TNF inhibitors, IL-17 inhibitors, IL-23 inhibitors, and then IL-12/23 inhibitors.
Whoa, okay, so each one works a little differently.
Exactly. And while they're showing a lot of promise for treating psoriasis, it is still relatively new. More research is being done all the time.
Makes sense. Medicine is always evolving. Okay, so we've covered the topical treatments, the light therapy, and now these biologics. What about, it says here, systemic medications? That sounds intense.
It can be. These are medications, either pills you swallow or injections, and they work throughout your entire body.
So no messing around then.
They're usually reserved for more severe cases, like when other treatments haven't worked. We're talking the big guns.
And I'm guessing like any big gun medication, there are potential side effects.
Definitely. That's why the research stresses that they're usually a short-term thing. used to get flare-ups under control.
So your doctor would work with you to figure out if those are right for you. Okay, so we've got our big guns for when things are really bad. And that brings us back to the more, shall we say, gentle approach of a warm compress.
Yes, back to basics.
After all those other treatments, this one almost sounds, I don't know, relaxing.
Right. It can be helpful for softening up those scales, making them easier to remove. But even with a warm compress, you got to be super careful around your eyes. The research actually recommends using it along with like over-the-counter eyelid cleaners that are specifically made for this.
Okay, good to know. So much for assuming any of this would be simple. But hey, at least we're armed with information now, right?
Yeah.
What's next on our deep dive itinerary?
It is. Now, we talked about treatments, but what does the research say about what actually causes this whole eyelid psoriasis thing in the first place?
Well, that's what I want to know. I mean, you'd think with all the medical advancements, we'd have this figured out by now, right?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But unfortunately, it's still a bit of a mystery.
Really?
Yeah, which is frustrating, I'm sure, for both patients and doctors.
I bet. So, what do we know? Give me the basics.
Well, genetics are definitely involved. If psoriasis runs in your family, you're more likely to develop it. That includes eyelid psoriasis.
Okay, so the whole blame it on your parents thing actually holds some weight here.
It does. It does. But it's not just your genes. The source also talks about the immune system playing a major role. Remember that overactive immune response we talked about?
Yeah, like it's working overtime, but not in a good way.
Exactly. Your immune system is basically sending out the wrong signals, telling those skin cells to, like, go into overdrive.
Okay, so we've got genetics, we've got this immune system mix-up. What else is going on? There's got to be more to it, right?
Oh, there is. There are a bunch of potential triggers that can either cause a first-time flare-up or make existing psoriasis worse.
Okay, this is what I was waiting for, the detective work. Hit me with it. What are the culprits?
Well, it's not as simple as, like, avoid these foods, though. Diet can play a role. We're talking things like stress-hormonal changes.
Yeah.
Even skin injuries.
Hold on, skin injuries. How does, like, a cut on my arm have anything to do with my eyelids?
It's not any skin injury. The research talks about something called the Koebner phenomenon.
Yeah.
Basically, it means that in some people with psoriasis, if they get a skin injury, even a small one, it can trigger a new patch of psoriasis right there in that spot.
Whoa, that is wild. So it's like our skin remembers, like, any little injury can bring back this, like, this unwanted guest.
Exactly. Now, the research hasn't quite figured out why this happens, but it's definitely an area of ongoing study.
Wow. Well, that's going on my list of things to look up later. So many twists and turns in this deep dive. Okay, so even though there's no single cause, the good news is there are ways to manage eyelid psoriasis, right?
Absolutely. Treatment is crucial. But the source also mentioned some really practical, everyday tips for keeping those symptoms at bay.
All right, give me those secrets to happy eyelids.
Well, it all starts with gentle cleansing. We know the eyelids are super sensitive, so using harsh soaps or scrubbing too hard is a big no-no.
Duly noted. No more using my dish soap to wash my face.
Probably a good rule in general. The source specifically recommends baby shampoo or those over-the-counter eyelid wipes made for sensitive eyes.
Makes sense. Why else?
Artificial tears. They can really help with the dryness and itchiness.
Oh, yeah. I've used those before when my eyes were dry. Never thought about them for psoriasis, though.
They can make a big difference. And this one is important. I cannot stress this enough. Avoid rubbing your eyes.
Yeah. Easier said than done, though. But I know rubbing just makes the inflammation worse.
Exactly. Like scratching an itch. Feels good in the moment, but ultimately backfires.
Speaking of things that feel good in the moment, I gotta ask. The source mentions lifestyle choices and psoriasis. Are we about to talk about my diet? Because if we are, I'm already feeling guilty.
Huh. You read my mind. While there's no magic psoriasis diet, there is some evidence that what you eat can impact your symptoms.
Okay, lay it on me. What should I be stocking up on or maybe avoiding in the name of happy eyelids?
It's not about deprivation or anything. The research actually emphasizes a balanced approach is key.
Okay, phew, that's a relief. So what does balanced look like for someone with, like, potential eyelid psoriasis?
Think foods that are naturally anti-inflammatory. So colorful fruits and veggies, things like berries, leafy greens, tomatoes.
Okay, so far so good. I can get behind all that.
And fatty fish like salmon, omega-3 fatty acids.
All right. What about the do not eat list? Anything I gotta banish from my pantry right this second?
Well, everyone's different, but the research does point to a few usual suspects. Processed foods, refined sugars, excessive alcohol.
So basically all the things that are delicious but terrible for me anyway.
Pretty much. But it's all about moderation, being aware of how certain things make you feel.
Right, right. It's about finding that balance. So we've got the diet stuff. Any other lifestyle changes that can help? I'm feeling motivated.
That's the spirit. The research also talks about managing stress and getting enough sleep.
Ugh, the sleep lecture. Coming right up.
Well, it's true. When you're sleep deprived, your body produces more cortisol, that stress hormone, and that can make inflammation worse.
So getting enough sleep really is like a mini vacation for our immune system. Man, I need to prioritize that.
Me too. Oh, and the research mentions being mindful of your environment. Dry air, really hot or cold temperatures, even certain fabrics can irritate your skin and make those psoriasis symptoms worse.
So it's like we got to become like skincare detectives and figure out our triggers.
Exactly. Pay attention to what your body's telling you.
This might sound like a weird question, but the research mentions that psoriasis can't be spread by skin contact. Why even say that?
Because, unfortunately, there are still a lot of misconceptions about psoriasis. People see those red, scaly patches and they just assume it's contagious.
Oh, wow. That's awful.
It is. Education is key. The more people understand about psoriasis, the less likely they are to judge.
Right. Knowledge is power. Speaking of which, the research also talks about how eyelid psoriasis can really impact someone's life, and not just because of the physical symptoms.
Exactly. It can take a toll on your emotions, how you socialize. That often gets overlooked.
Yeah, I can imagine having something so visible on your face, especially a part of your face that everyone sees, would be really tough.
Absolutely. You start to feel like everyone's staring at your eyelids. It can be incredibly isolating.
Man, that's rough. So, what can someone do if they are feeling overwhelmed by that emotional, social side of things?
The research really emphasizes seeking support, whether it's from, friends and family, a therapist, even support groups. Have you ever considered joining a support group?
I haven't personally, but I can definitely see how helpful that would be.
It can make you realize you're not alone.
It really does make a difference to know you're not alone. Seems like with eyelid psoriasis, it's not as simple as, like, just slapping on some cream and hoping for the best.
You said it. It's a lot more, you got to be proactive, not
Yeah.
just with the physical stuff, but the emotional side too.
Becoming your own health advocate.
There you go.
Speaking of which, earlier you mentioned there's no cure for psoriasis, but you can manage it. What does that actually look like, especially for someone dealing with it on their eyelids?
It's a journey, not a destination. You got to figure out what works for you, which takes some trial and error.
So working closely with your doctor is key.
Absolutely. Think of it like putting together a puzzle. You try different treatments, different lifestyle changes, until you find that sweet spot.
Where your symptoms are more manageable.
Exactly.
So patience, persistence, being proactive about your health.
And knowledge.
Mm.
Don't forget knowledge. The more you understand about what's going on, the more power you have.
Makes sense. Speaking of knowledge, I was doing a bit more reading about that Koebner phenomenon we talked about.
Oh, yeah?
It's kind of mind-blowing how much we don't know about the human body, even with all the amazing medical advancements we have.
It's true. It's a constant source of fascination, isn't it? Always something new to discover.
Which I guess is what makes this whole field so interesting. Okay, well, I think we've covered a ton about eyelid psoriasis today. The science, the symptoms, the management, clearly not a simple condition.
Definitely keeps us on our toes.
So for our listeners who are taking all this in, what would you say is the most important thing to remember from this whole deep dive?
Knowledge is power, plain and simple. The more you know about eyelid psoriasis, the better. Whether you're dealing with it yourself or you know someone who is.
Knowing the facts helps you ask the right questions, advocate for yourself, and support others.
100%. And never be afraid to speak up. Challenge those assumptions. Find reliable sources of information. Because there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Oh, for sure. You gotta be careful what you believe these days. Well, thanks to your incredible insights, I think we've done a good job of sorting fact from fiction today.
Glad to be here. Always happy to talk about this stuff.
And listeners, hopefully you feel a little more informed, a little more empowered to tackle whatever health challenges come your way. But before we go, I do want to leave you with a bit of a thought, something to chew on. We talked about how certain medications can sometimes trigger psoriasis flare-ups, right?
Say it can happen.
And it just got me thinking, with so many people taking medications these days, do we really know enough about their long-term effects on our skin? especially when it comes to conditions like psoriasis?
That's a really good question. And honestly, it's something the researchers are still trying to figure out. It's complicated, this relationship between what we put in our bodies and how our skin reacts.
It's a good reminder that we got to talk to our doctors, be open and honest, and really weigh those risks and benefits.
Informed consent is so important.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, we'll leave you to ponder that thought-provoking question. Thank you, as always, for joining us for another deep dive. And until next time, stay curious.